The mountains had always felt like guardians to me. Towering peaks and silent valleys, frozen rivers and endless snow. They moved at their own pace, untouched by human chaos. Tonight, however, they felt like witnesses, holding their breath as I stood by the large window of my Alpine cabin. Outside, the storm had begun in earnest. Snow fell thickly, thick enough to swallow the world beyond my small sanctuary. Franz was inside, pacing, impatient as ever. He had insisted he needed to go. I watched him tug on his jacket, the same one he wore on skiing excursions, though the storm was clearly growing too fierce. "They're expecting me," he said casually, tossing the keys onto the counter. "It's just a party. I'll be back before morning." "The storm is getting worse," I said, my voice firmer than I felt. "The road is disappearing. You shouldn't go." He scoffed, eyes rolling as if my concern were an annoyance. "You worry too much, Elsa." "You always do," he said, brushing past me. My throat tightened. "Then stay. Just tonight," I pleaded. He didn't even look at me. "You'll be fine. You like the quiet anyway," he said, shrugging, already halfway to the door. My hands gripped the counter. "Franz, the radio." "I'm taking it," he interrupted sharply, tossing me a glance that was more irritation than love. "No reception up there anyway. Relax." The door slammed behind him before I could argue further. And then silence. Not the gentle, comforting silence of snowfall, but a void that pressed in on me from every wall, every ceiling beam. The wind screamed against the cabin as if testing its strength, rattling the windows, pushing the shadows to dance like monsters across the floor. My phone was useless. The radio space was empty. Franz had taken the only vehicle. Hours passed. The fire weakened. My fingers stiffened. My arms were numb. I layered blankets, pacing and retreating to the hearth repeatedly, trying to find warmth in the failing embers. I told myself repeatedly that he would come back, that he couldn't have left me to face the storm alone. He wouldn't leave me, I whispered to the cabin walls. He wouldn't. Yet the night stretched on. The storm showed no mercy. The snow piled against the doors, drifting in through cracks. I curled into a ball near the hearth, teeth chattering, unable to stem the shaking that racked my body. My lungs burned, my limbs refused to cooperate, and each breath was a battle against the growing ice that clung to my skin. "This is how it ends?" I murmured, my voice tiny in the vastness of the storm. The cold didn't answer. It only pressed closer, a living thing wrapping around my chest, my throat, my heart. And in that freezing silence, a spark ignited inside me. Not fear. Not desperation. Clarity. If I survived this, I would never again beg warmth from someone who chose cold over me. And as the snow piled higher, I understood one undeniable truth. Something inside me was already changing. Something crystalline, unbreakable, prepared to withstand everything Franz had ever threatened to bring into my life. Because if the mountains could endure centuries of storms, so could I. Time fractured in the blizzard. I drifted in and out of consciousness, my body a frozen husk, my mind a fog of pain and panic. Every limb felt like it belonged to someone else. The warmth I had taken for granted, the steady rhythm of breathing, even the gentle beating of my own heart, all were gone. In their place was ice, crawling along my skin, seeping into my bones. Memories floated in strangely, childhood winters spent in the Swiss valleys, the soft ticking of the clocks in my father's workshop, moments of delicate precision and careful control. I had always prided myself on being meticulous, on noticing the smallest detail. But now, all that skill, all that care, seemed powerless against the storm. I tried to move, to reach the fireplace again, but the cold mocked me. My fingers wouldn't bend. My legs refused to carry me. I could hear the wind shrieking through the cabin, rattling the walls, shaking the structure as though it knew it could conquer me. He wouldn't leave me, I whispered to myself. The words trembled in the icy air. Franz, he wouldn't do this. But he had. He had gone to the party, leaving me with nothing, No warmth, no radio, no vehicle. Just the snow, the wind, and the encroaching void. Hours, or was it minutes, passed. My thoughts slowed, reduced to fragments. The room around me dissolved into white, gray, and black. Then I heard it, a low, distant hum. A vibration cutting through the storm. My chest tightened. What is that? I whispered. Another hum, louder this time, like a heartbeat that didn't belong to me. I tried to cry out, but my throat was frozen. Then the door burst open. "Elsa," a voice shouted, slicing through the roaring wind. "Elsa, answer me." The sound was like fire in my frozen veins. Strong arms lifted me, holding me close, pressing heat into every inch of my body. I inhaled sharply, tasting leather, snow, and something steady, solid, alive. "She's freezing," the voice said urgently. "We need heat. Now." I tried to speak. Nothing came out. My lips barely formed a sound. "Elsa, can you hear me?" The voice repeated, desperation laced through the calm. Recognition bloomed. Stefan. The architect. The man who had quietly loved me for years, whose presence had always been a gentle constant in my life. His eyes widened as he took in my state. "I knew something was wrong," he said softly, voice breaking. "He never leaves you like this." I had to come. The warmth he offered was more than physical, it was shelter. I let my head rest against his chest, shivering violently, but anchored. "Stay with me," he whispered. "Please. Don't drift away." I did. And when I awoke hours later, in a bed that smelled of blankets and firelight, I knew, without hesitation, that I was no longer the woman Franz could leave behind. The storm had carved something into me, a heart no longer soft and pliable, but hard, brilliant, and unyielding. I was reborn. And the woman who would face Franz next would not beg. She would not plead. She would stand, a diamond forged in ice and snow, ready to cut through lies. The days after the blizzard were quieter than I expected. The mountains, which had seemed merciless just nights before, now rested in a calm, glittering white. I moved slowly, each step measured, my body still aching, yet every movement carried a strange new weight, a sense of precision I had never felt before. Stefan stayed nearby, hovering without intruding. He never asked for explanations, never forced warmth on me that I wasn't ready to accept. Instead, he offered steady presence, a safety net of silent assurance. "You're awake," he said one morning, watching me trace the frost along the window pane. "How are you feeling?" I'm here," I said, and it was the truth. Not fully whole yet, but somewhere in the liminal space between who I was and who I was becoming. "You should rest more," he said softly, though his eyes betrayed a worry he could not hide. I shook my head. "Rest won't change what happened. I can't pretend." His gaze softened. "I know. You don't have to." The honesty in his voice cut through the numbness. I had spent years bending myself to fit someone else's whims, someone who would leave me alone in a blizzard without a thought. Franz had taught me coldness and betrayal. Stefan taught me strength without pressure. "I can't go back to being the person I was," I said quietly, my hands gripping the windowsill. "The one who bends, who forgives without reason, she's gone." Stefan stepped closer, his shadow falling across the frost. "Good," he said, "because she never deserved to stay." I turned to face him, the warmth of his presence mingling with the chill still lingering in my bones. "I need to be precise now. Calculated. If he tries to come back into my life, I won't falter. I won't stumble." "You won't," he said, his voice firm. "I'll make sure of it." Something inside me crystallized at that moment. Fear and vulnerability were replaced with clarity and sharp edges. The woman Franz left behind had been fragile, pliable, trusting too easily. That woman had nearly died in the storm. The woman who remained now was hardened, brilliant, and unyielding, a heart of diamond. "I will not let him dictate my life again," I whispered. "He can't hurt me. He can't claim me. He will regret ever thinking he could." Stefan reached out, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder. Then he will, he said. But only because he'll never understand how strong you've become. And I'll be here to make sure he never touches your life again. I studied him, really studied him for the first time, and felt the stirrings of something I had long suppressed. Affection. Trust. Desire. Not shallow, not needy, but steady. You've always seen me, I said. Even when I didn't see myself. He smiled softly, the kind of smile that didn't need words. I always will, he said. And for the first time since the blizzard, I felt my pulse steady, my breath unshaken. The storm had left its mark on me, yes, but it had also shaped me. I was no longer vulnerable, no longer naive. I had been reforged in ice and pain, sharpened into a woman who would stand, unwavering, no matter what came next. A diamond heart, unyielding, brilliant, ready. It was late afternoon when Franz returned. The snowstorm had finally eased, leaving a brutal quiet in its wake. The mountains shimmered under a pale sun, but the air was sharp, biting, and clean, like a knife against exposed skin. I was in the workshop, arranging tools and sketches, when I heard the engine crunching over the icy driveway. My heart didn't skip. It did not flutter. Instead, I felt an icy calm settle over me. He stepped out of the vehicle, brushing snow from his hair, laughter dancing on his lips. Elsa, you won't believe the party. The girls were gorgeous, the slopes perfect. You should have seen it. His tone was casual, self-absorbed. He didn't notice me at first. I straightened, arms crossed. You should have stayed, I said, voice deliberate, low, controlled. Franz blinked, a slight frown crossing his features. I went to a party. What's wrong with that? You left me alone during a blizzard. You took the only vehicle. You took the radio. Do you understand how close I was to? My throat tightened for a moment, but I forced the words out. To not surviving? He laughed, brushing it off like it was a story he'd already forgotten. You're dramatic. It wasn't that bad. I mean, Snow, Elsa, you're exaggerating. I didn't move. I didn't blink. Exaggerating? I echoed, my voice calm, cutting. You left me in a remote cabin, surrounded by freezing mountains, with no way to call for help. That's not exaggeration. That's recklessness. That's betrayal. Franz's smile faltered, just for a moment. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Well, you're alive. Isn't that enough? I stepped closer, my eyes cold, hard. Alive isn't the same as safe. Alive isn't the same as respected. Alive isn't the same as loved. You never loved me. You used me. His hands lifted, helplessly. Elsa, You left me to die. I cut in sharply. And now you return as if nothing happened. That's the man I knew, isn't it? He swallowed. I didn't think. You didn't think. I repeated, letting the words land like stones. You never think. You never care. You only take. The calm I had felt all afternoon hardened further. I could see him clearly now, not the man I had imagined, the one I had loved, but a stranger wearing the same face. His charm was empty. His apologies meaningless. Stefan appeared at the doorway then, watching from the shadows. His presence was silent, but commanding. Franz, he said quietly. Leave. Now. Franz turned, startled, anger flashing. Who are you? Stefan stepped forward, calm, unyielding. Someone who will make sure you never enter this cabin again. Franz's lips twitched, but he realized there was no room for theatrics. His usual arrogance faltered in the presence of the two of us, a woman reborn and a man who refused to let her fall again. I looked back at him, my heart like diamond. Go. You're done here. And don't come back. He hesitated, swallowed his pride, and left. The snow outside swallowed the sound of his engine. Silence returned, but it felt different this time. Earned, protective, mine. I turned to Stefan, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the fire. Thank you, I said softly. For what? He asked, eyes steady. For standing, I said. For seeing me. For not letting him define me. He smiled faintly, just enough. That was always my job. And I knew then, nothing would ever weaken me again. Not Franz. Not storms. Not the cold. I was whole. I was diamond. The days after Franz's return felt strange, not with fear or panic, but with a simmering sense of power I hadn't known I possessed. The mountains outside remained stark and silent, yet inside the cabin, the air shifted. Every movement I made, every word I spoke, felt deliberate. I was no longer the woman who could be pushed, cajoled, or overlooked. I was Elsa Hoffman, reborn. Stefan stayed close, offering guidance without intrusion. "He'll try something," he said one evening, voice low as we stood by the frost-coated window. "He always does. You need to be ready." I nodded, the weight of the moment settling like steel in my chest. "I'm ready," I said. "I've been ready since the storm." He glanced at me, studying me as though he could see the crystallized heart beneath my skin. "I've never seen you like this," he admitted. "You're different." "Yes," I agreed. "I'm not the same Elsa he left behind. I can't be. I won't be." The first step was subtle. Franz had financial control, or at least he thought he did. He assumed access to the cabin, to the accounts, to the semblance of power he had built around me. Stefan and I worked quietly, systematically. We closed doors, rerouted accounts, and created new boundaries. Every action was precise, deliberate, clean. Franz noticed the shifts too late. One afternoon, he stormed into the cabin, the usual self-assured grin plastered on his face. "What is all this?" he demanded, gesturing at the newly organized workspace. "You're changing things without me?" I turned to face him fully, my stance calm, unshakable. "I am changing things without you," I said softly, letting each word land. "Because these things, this life, this home, this work, they are mine, not yours." His laugh was sharp, brittle. "You can't." "I already have," I interrupted. "Step by step, door by door. You no longer decide. You no longer enter. You no longer influence." He froze, the first real hesitation I had ever seen in him. His face flushed, anger mixed with disbelief. "You think you can just—" "I don't think," I said, leaning forward slightly, voice steady. "I know." Stefan, silent until now, stepped beside me. "He won't come back here," he said. "And if he does, he'll leave. Permanently." Franz's shoulders tightened. "You, both of you. You?" I asked softly. "You left me to nearly die. You abandoned me. And now you're surprised I'm taking control?" His hands fell uselessly to his sides. For the first time, I saw the man I had married, the selfish, shallow version, incapable of facing the consequences of his actions. I took a step forward, closing the distance. "I survived because I didn't depend on you," I said, letting the words cut through the tension. "And I won't need you ever again." He stared at me for a long moment, then finally turned, retreating without another word. I didn't watch him leave. I didn't need to. Stefan and I simply returned to the window, watching the snow settle silently on the peaks. "You did it," he said quietly. "No," I replied. "I simply stopped letting him exist in my life. The rest is just consequence." And in that quiet Alpine cabin, I felt it fully, a new sense of mastery over myself, over my home, over my life. Franz was gone, not in a dramatic explosion, but through methodical precision. And I, Elsa Hoffman, heart crystallized by ice and fire, was finally free. The snow had melted slightly outside, revealing the rugged beauty of the Alps, and with it, a sense of renewal filled the cabin. But inside, the warmth that Stefan and I had cultivated was not just from the fire, it was from control, from ownership of my own life. Stefan approached me one evening, a folder in his hands, a small smile playing on his lips. "I've been working on something," he said softly. "A new space for you." I raised an eyebrow, curiosity mingling with caution. "A space?" He nodded. "A workshop. Designed entirely around you. Your craft, your pace, your rules. Franz can never enter. Ever." I took the folder from him, tracing the lines of the blueprint with my fingers. My pulse quickened, but not in fear, anticipation. Every corner of the design reflected thoughtfulness, a sanctuary of warmth and precision. "It's perfect," I whispered. "It's yours," Stefan said firmly. "No compromises. No interruptions. No one dictating your life. You wanted control? Here it is." I looked up at him, and for the first time, I allowed myself to feel gratitude beyond words. You've always seen me," I said, "even when I couldn't see myself." He chuckled softly, the kind of sound that makes warmth linger in the chest. "And I always will. That hasn't changed." The following days were a rhythm of preparation. Walls were measured, spaces curated, everything aligned with my vision. Stefan never rushed me, never corrected without care. It was a different kind of love, one that didn't demand but protected, nurtured, and amplified. One afternoon, Franz appeared, unaware of the changes we had implemented. He looked around the cabin, a faint smugness on his lips. "What's going on here? You're reorganizing without me?" I didn't answer at first. I let him see the strength in my posture, the clarity in my gaze. "I'm designing my life without you," I said simply. "And this is just the beginning." He laughed, the sound brittle, unsure. "You think a few walls and a workshop will keep me out?" "I don't think," I replied. "I know." Stefan stepped beside me, silent but firm. "He won't enter this space. Not now. Not ever." Franz's expression faltered, realization dawning that his presence here had been nullified. He turned, mouth opening as if to argue, but the words caught in his throat. There was no path forward for him, no claim over me, no influence left. When he finally left, the quiet that returned was different. Earned, protective, and filled with potential. I turned back to the blueprint in my hands. "This isn't just walls," I murmured. "This is freedom." Stefan smiled, gently brushing a stray lock of hair from my face. "And you deserve every inch of it," he said. "Every moment in it. Every breath." I nodded, feeling the truth in his words. I had survived storms, betrayal, and ice. I had been left to die in the blizzard, and yet here I stood, strong, precise, unbreakable. "This house," I said softly, tracing the design once more. "It chose me, and now I choose it. And myself." Stefan's hand found mine, his fingers entwining with mine in quiet solidarity. "And I choose you," he whispered. For the first time, I realized the magnitude of what had shifted. My life was no longer defined by someone else's selfish whims. It was mine. And for the first time in years, I felt truly at home, both in the mountains and in my own heart. The cabin had changed. Not just the walls or the furniture, not just the new workshop Stefan had designed for me, but the air itself felt different. Each breath I took was warmer, richer, more deliberate. No longer filled with fear, panic, or frost, but with clarity, with possibility. Stefan had stayed close over the past weeks, not pressing, not insisting, only present. I had always known he cared, but now I realized just how much his steady presence mattered. Every glance, every word, every gesture built a safety net I didn't even know I needed. That evening, the mountains outside glowed under a soft golden light, snow sparkling like scattered crystals. I found Stefan in the living room, tracing the edges of the fireplace with his fingers, as if feeling the solidity of the stone anchored him. "You never left," I said quietly, sitting across from him. He turned, eyes softening. "I promised I wouldn't."
"And I meant it," he said.
"I know," I whispered. "But I had to test myself first." He tilted his head, curious. "Test yourself?" "Yes," I said, my voice low. "To see if I could survive without fear, without relying on someone else to save me. To see if I could be Elsa Hoffman, the woman I've always wanted to be." His lips curved into a small, proud smile. "And I can," I replied, reaching for his hand. My fingers found his, warm, solid, steady. Because I survived the storm, because I faced betrayal, because I didn't falter. But I also realized something important. I don't want to face life alone anymore. He leaned closer, voice soft, reverent. Then don't, he whispered. I'm here. Always. I let myself lean into him, the warmth of his body a balm to my still recovering heart. It wasn't neediness or dependence, it was comfort, trust, and something deeper than I had allowed myself to feel before. A bond that acknowledged my strength while offering connection, a rare and precious thing. Stefan, I said, looking up at him, eyes bright with unspoken emotion. You didn't come for heroics or recognition. You came because you cared. Because you've always cared. He smiled softly, brushing a hand along my hair. I've always been here, Elsa. Even when I couldn't show it, I was waiting for the right moment. For you to see yourself as the woman you are now. I exhaled, a long, steady breath. I see her now. And I want her to be loved, not controlled. Trusted, not owned. Warmed, not frozen. You will be, he said firmly. By me. Always. We sat in quiet, hands intertwined, listening to the snow gently falling outside. For the first time, I didn't think of Franz, of betrayal, of the storm. I didn't think of survival or fear. I simply existed, warm, safe, alive. I never knew warmth could feel like this, I admitted, resting my head on his shoulder. It feels like home, he said softly. And you, Elsa, are home to me. And in that moment, I understood that love could exist without compromise, without fear, without cold. Stefan wasn't here to fix me. He was here to stand with me, side by side, in the life I had forged from ice and pain. I squeezed his hand. Then let's stay here. Together. In this warmth. Together, he said. And for the first time, I didn't just survive the mountains. I embraced them. And the man who had waited for me all along. The snow had melted from the peaks, leaving jagged granite glistening under the early morning sun. The Alpine air smelled fresh, sharp, and alive. But inside the cabin, my cabin, there was a different kind of clarity, one forged from months of storm, betrayal, and rebirth. This clarity was mine, unshakable, diamond-hard, tempered by fire and frost alike. I stood in the doorway of my new workshop, sunlight streaming through the windows, illuminating every corner I had helped Stefan design. Each shelf, every bench, every carefully curated space reflected more than precision. It reflected my control, my freedom, my life reclaimed. You did this, Stefan said softly from behind me, his voice carrying pride rather than instruction. Every line, every decision, it's all yours. I turned to face him, warmth blooming in my chest. We did it, I corrected. You guided, I decided. This is my life, Stefan. Mine. He smiled, eyes steady and full of admiration. And you built it beautifully. No one can take it from you. I traced a finger along one of the benches, feeling the smooth wood beneath my touch. It wasn't just a workshop. It wasn't just walls or furniture. It was sanctuary, proof, and promise. Franz had assumed he could manipulate, control, and enter every corner of my life. But now he could never. He will try to come back, Stefan said gently. Men like him always do. I met his gaze, unafraid, unwavering. Let him, I said softly. He won't find what he's looking for. Not anymore. I am not what I was. He took my hand, holding it firmly, letting me feel the warmth of him. You're stronger than he ever imagined, and more brilliant than he could ever comprehend. You're everything. I smiled, a soft, confident curve of my lips. And you? I asked, teasing lightly. What role do you play in all of this? Every moment, he said simply. I build my world around yours, Elsa. Your strength, your warmth, your life. I protect it, I honor it. And I'll love you without limits. I pressed my hand against his chest, feeling the steady beat of his heart. It matched mine now, deliberate, calm, unshakable. I don't need a hero, I said. I don't need someone to save me. I need someone who stands beside me. And you've done that in every way. His lips curved into a faint, satisfied smile. Then we're done waiting. Together, we shape the future. Together, we face everything. Together, we live. I turned back to the workshop, the cabin, the mountains outside, feeling the absolute truth of it. I was free. I was brilliant. I was alive. The storm that had tried to take me had only reforged me. Franz's betrayal had only sharpened me. And Stefan's presence had only reminded me that love doesn't demand surrender. It demands trust, respect, and unwavering loyalty. I exhaled, a long, steady breath. My life was built around me now, my choices, my heart, my freedom. And beside me stood a man who honored it, cherished it, and made space for it in his world. I had been forged in ice, hardened by betrayal, and refined into brilliance. And in the heart of the Swiss Alps, in the sanctuary we had built together, I finally knew what it meant to live fully, freely, and entirely. My heart, once vulnerable and fragile, now shone like diamond, unyielding, brilliant, and warm. And for the first time, I was completely, irrevocably, and joyously whole. The first night in my new workshop was quiet in the way only truly safe spaces can be. The fire crackled gently, casting a soft, golden glow over the walls. Outside, the last snow of winter melted slowly, dripping from eaves, the mountains standing serene and eternal. Inside, however, warmth had taken on a different meaning, one that pulsed, alive, and intimate. Stefan sat across from me on a soft blanket I had draped on the floor, a mug of hot chocolate in his hands. I watched him for a moment, the light catching the curve of his jaw, the gentleness in his eyes, and I realized that I was no longer the woman who feared being left behind. I was whole. I was alive. And I was exactly where I was supposed to be. "You know," he said, voice low and teasing, "I've waited a long time for this." He tilted his mug toward me, but his gaze stayed fixed on me, warm, deep, unwavering. I laughed softly, heart fluttering. "And I've spent years not realizing it," I replied, reaching out to brush a stray strand of hair from his face. My fingers lingered on his cheek, tracing the line of his jaw, feeling the warmth beneath my touch. He leaned closer, and I felt the pull of inevitability, the closeness that had always existed between us but had never been realized until now. "Elsa," he murmured, voice almost a whisper, "you have no idea how much I've wanted to do this." Our foreheads touched first, slow, deliberate, letting the connection build. I closed my eyes, feeling his breath mingling with mine, the heat of him grounding me in a way nothing else ever had. His hands moved to my shoulders, sliding gently down my arms, sending a shiver of warmth through me. I placed my hands over his, letting our fingers intertwine, skin pressing against skin, a tactile confirmation of trust, desire, and love. "Stefan," I whispered, heart racing, "I've never felt this safe. This wanted." "You're not just safe," he said softly, voice husky. "You're adored. You're mine in every way that matters. And I'll show you every day." I leaned into him, feeling his chest against mine, heartbeat against heartbeat. I let the tension of months, the storm, the betrayal, the fear, melt away in the heat of our closeness. I could feel the strong, steady rhythm of his pulse, his hands brushing lightly along my back, tracing the curve of my spine. We laughed softly, whispered secrets, shared warmth, letting our closeness speak where words could not. Every brush of fingers, every lingering hand, every small touch was an unspoken promise: safety, love, devotion. I felt cherished, seen, desired, not for what I gave, but for who I was. Finally, we settled against the fire, bodies entwined, warm and intimate in the soft glow of the room. Stefan held me close, forehead resting against mine, arms wrapped around me like the mountains themselves had chosen to embrace me. "I could stay here forever," I murmured, voice trembling with quiet happiness. "You will," he said. "Forever starts now. And every moment, every breath, every touch will be ours." I smiled, resting my head against his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. It was more than warmth, it was belonging. It was love built on trust, respect, and shared strength. In the heart of the Alps, in a cabin crafted for freedom and life, I felt every layer of my past melt away. I was no longer Elsa, who feared storms. I was Elsa reborn, loved, cherished, and embraced completely by the man who had always been meant to hold me. And in Stefan's arms, I finally understood what it meant to be home.